I had really been wanting and desiring someone who just knew what they wanted and wanted me and was clear about it. And then we have Justin coming in, knowing what he wants, being very clear about it. And you know what I did? I pulled away immediately. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa, and today on the podcast, I am going to be addressing a very, very popular request from you all, which is about my relationship with Justin. How did we get into this relationship? What was it like? And if I'm being completely honest, it's been nice to reflect on our relationship and seeing so many things differently now that I've done a lot of the inner work, the shadow work, the inner child work, and really seeing how I related to my relationship with him in the beginning versus how I relate to it now. And we'll see how much of it I get into. I mostly want to talk about the first half of our relationship. For those of you who know me or who have been in my world a while, you probably know that we had broken up for a period of time and then had gotten back together or have gotten back together. And we've been together this second half almost longer than we were the first half. But anyways, there's a lot of shit that went down, as Frank grunts. There's a lot of shit that went down and so many things that unfolded, but I mostly want to focus on the first half of our relationship because getting into a healthy, consistent relationship triggered all of my trauma in a way that it had never been triggered before. And I think that this is something that isn't really talked about very much, or at least in my experience. I think back to that time and I'm constantly like, I wish somebody would have told me. I wish I would have known this. I wish I had some of this information then, because I likely would have shown up very, very different in the beginning of our relationship. And I am a huge advocate that you cannot miss what is meant for you. And if it was meant to happen any other way than it would have. And even still, there was a lot that was coming up for me at that time. And hopefully this episode can illuminate or help you feel seen if you have found yourself in a consistent, healthy relationship. And maybe you notice these patterns within yourself or the way that you're relating to your relationship. And so my intention is to illuminate some of the patterns or some of the ways of relating to a healthy, consistent relationship, especially if you've had trauma or codependent patterns like me. So, how did Justin and I meet? Well, we actually met on his birthday, and I attended his birthday dinner without actually knowing him at the time, but we had a few mutual friends, and I had just moved back from Hawaii. I had just spent a year there getting my fucking shit together because of a breakup I had had, and I needed to find myself. And I did find myself in a lot of ways. That could be a whole other podcast episode. But anyways, I end up going to Justin's birthday dinner. And he was so nice. Like, everyone there was super friendly. Like I said, I had a couple mutual friends, so I didn't feel super out of place. And after dinner, we all decided to go get drinks at this local bar that ended up being like our second home at the time. You have to remember, we were in our early 20s, early mid 20s. We were having fun. And this is the day that Drake's album, Nothing Was the Same, came out. And fun fact, Justin and I both are slightly obsessed with Drake, and we bonded instantly. We were like, we need to get this. We need to get the aux cord in this bar and play this album front to back, which we did just that. And it's funny because honestly, nothing was the same after that. Justin and I became fast friends. He was like the boy version of me. I felt so myself. I didn't hide parts of myself. I was goofy. I was silly. I was just the most favorite version of myself with him. Like, I didn't hide anything. And he was very similar in that way. We laughed a lot. We talked a lot. We had a lot of deep conversations. We had a lot of similar interests, so it was really easy to become best friends with him. We related on so many ways, like with our childhoods and how we were raised and what was important to us and our values. And funny enough, like I lived next to his cousin for a long time. Like there was like all these moments where we're like, we probably knew each other at one point, but just don't even remember. We even went to the same high school together. Don't remember him at all. He doesn't remember me at all either. Like it's just a lot of weird, like we were orbiting in each other's world from a very, very young age, like elementary school, playing at the same parks, etc. And so in this time after meeting him and I were pretty inseparable. We would go to the gym together, we would go out with our friends together, we would end up walking home because we lived a couple blocks away from each other together. I would crash on his couch all of the time. And I want to highlight, we were friends. I was his wing woman. Like it wasn't a romantic connection, at least for me. And he says for him too in the beginning. And if I'm being totally honest, I was immersed in this situationship with a person who was clearly communicating that he wasn't interested, except for those moments when he was interested. Like it was a very come in ghost, come in love bomb ghost. And it was, yeah, I was hooked. I had found myself in a relationship I had found myself in many of times. And Justin was a great person to talk to. And he was always really there for me and supportive. And we just had a real good thing going. And it was until one of our friends had planted this seed and said to us separately at one point, you know, when are you guys just going to start dating? And I remember my initial response was like, ew, oh my goodness, I could never. He's like my brother. He's like a sibling. Like I could never. It's just not like that. That was my first response was like, ew, what are you talking about? Never in a million years. But let me tell you, that fucking seed got watered. That seed got watered. I watered that seed a lot. And, you know, I know now that that seed was also planted in Justin because that same friend, shouts out, you know who you are, that same friend said that to him as well. When are you guys just going to date? You guys are perfect for each other. You guys spend every single day together. And he had the same response as far as he told me, which was like, no, we're friends. Like, it's not like that. Now, when we started going to the gym together, when we were going on hikes together, when we were hanging out with our friends, when we were going out at bars and laughing our faces off together, I started having these thoughts of like, wait, I'm my best self with him. Like, why not him? Like, maybe, I don't like, maybe this could be a thing. I don't know. And then I was like, this is going to get messy. Then you have that conversation with yourself of, this person is my best friend. I absolutely love and adore this person. I don't want to ruin this because this is a really good thing. Like, I would hate to not have him in my life. And so I know that's a common thing that happens, right? Like friends and you kind of start liking each other, but you don't want to ruin the friendship. It was textbook that. But after some time, it was very apparent that I was developing feelings and he was developing feelings. And I know this because I would see him with someone and then I was starting to feel like a little sad or upset. And he was almost becoming more attentive, more present, more there than he was before, which I didn't even know was possible. And then one night he leaned in, he kissed me, and in true Alyssa Justin fashion, I'll go ahead and pull Drake in again. Nothing was the same. It was like everything shifted from that moment on. And he was really forward. He was really clear. He spoke what he wanted, what his intentions were right out the gate, which was, I want to be with you. I want you to be my partner. And I'm serious. Like, I'm serious about this. Like, I want to invest in this. And what's interesting, so here's where I want to start talking about healthy, consistent, relationship. Here's a partner who knows what he wants, knows what he is looking for, and is clearly communicating that. which are all things that I had been clearly articulating to the universe. I want someone who knows what they want, because remember, I was in this situationship with someone who was very hot and cold, and I was desperate for someone just like to know what they want. Just, I want someone who wants me, you know? Who doesn't? And that's really what I was trying to call in at that time. Frank. Apparently, Frank has some things to say about this. Huh? Yeah? He just like knocked over the camera. So, anyways, I had really been wanting and desiring someone who just knew what they wanted and wanted me and was clear about it. And then we have Justin coming in, knowing what he wants, being very clear about it. And you know what I did? I pulled. I pulled away immediately. It wasn't even like I leaned in for a second. I immediately went into, I'm not really looking for a relationship right now. Can we just do friends with benefits? Like, I just not ready. Okay, sorry, you guys. I have to pause this because Frank keeps moving and nudging the cushions, which is nudging the camera. So I have to show you guys this. So I had to like throw the cushions on the ground so that he would stop nudging them. But now look at him. He's like grunting and sighing at me. He looks so sad. What's wrong, Bubba? What's wrong? Oh my goodness. He's like, you knocked my cushion off, bitch. Like, that's what's wrong. Now, what am I going to push up against? Okay, so sorry about the little detour in conversation, but things were getting crazy over here. And my camera's moved a bunch of times, so the video of this is going to be interesting. Anyways, let me see if I can get back on track. I wanted someone who knew what they wanted and could clearly articulate that, because what I was getting from this person who I was in a situationship with was very much the opposite of that. And then I have Justin come in, clearly articulating what he wants, telling me that it's me and what his intentions are. And I do what this person who I was in a situationship with, I do what he's doing, which is telling him I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm kind of going through a lot right now. Like, I can't even remember what excuses I gave him, but I was just like, can we just be friends with benefits? Can we just be fuck buddies? Because that's working out great for us, and that's what guys want, right? And apparently I had convinced myself that that's what I wanted. And he agreed. Although he didn't agree for very long, within I don't even think it was 2 weeks, he sat me down again and was like, I'm not interested in hooking up with you and like that being it. Like, I don't want to be just someone who hooks up with you. Like, that's not my intention. That's not what I want. We either date and become girlfriend and boyfriend and commit to each other, or we don't do anything, period. And I am still baffled by my responses. Like, I was so annoyed. I was like, oh, this is so annoying. I can't believe you're giving me this ultimatum. Like, everything was good. I was just such a child. And I was truly running away from this connection because it was triggering my unresolved trauma, which is people leave me, people reject me, people abandon me, people betray me. And here he is being very much the opposite of all of those things. And so I go into rejecting him, abandoning him, and pushing him away because I don't know how to fucking deal with someone being the opposite of those things. When I look back to my earliest relationships, they were often with people who were just far enough out of reach that I was always feeling this fear of abandonment and rejection and betrayal. I was always not sure if this person was going to be loyal. I was always not sure if this person was being honest. I had created so much safety in someone being just far enough out of reach And that is what I deemed as like normal, safe. And that is also this is what I know now. That is also what I equated love to. Love is when I feel somatically my nervous system dysregulated. Love is the butterflies in your belly, which is really for me just like anxiety that this person is just far enough out of reach. I equated that to love. For me, I had equated love to someone who is inconsistent or someone who is hot and cold. And I had spent my life in relationships trying to reconcile the abandonment, betrayal, and rejection I had experienced in my childhood through my romantic partners. So let me clarify that a little bit more. As a child, I had felt abandoned and rejected from my parents because of the sexual abuse I had experienced. Because when I went to my mom to tell her, nothing happened, nothing changed, it was shoved under the rug. I had felt that betrayal from both of them in very, very different ways. I had felt it from the person who was abusing me, right? Makes sense. But also felt it from the person who I told that I confided in that was supposed to also protect me, that was unable to do so due to just where she was at in her life. And so the story that this very young part of me told was people who love me abandon, reject, betray me. So I looked for partners that mirrored that. And then I do in the relationship what I did as a child, which was try to reconcile that, try to prove that I'm worthy of staying, that I'm worthy of being protected, that I'm worthy of being loved. And I did that through learning all these different codependency patterns, changing myself, people pleasing, fawning, making myself a chameleon. Who do I need to be in order for you to love me? And I got really fucking good at it. So good that I would totally fool myself, even. Like, no, I totally love fucking this sport or whatever. This is my favorite sport. And I've become obsessed with the sport. But then when that person wasn't around, it's like I didn't particularly gravitate towards watching or learning or knowing about that sport. So it's like, did I really like it, or did I just have this facade that made me look and seem a certain way that made me more desirable to said partner? And with Justin, remember I was telling you, I felt like my most authentic self. I wasn't trying to be likable to him. I wasn't trying to impress him because I didn't have any romantic feelings towards him in the beginning. It was just, I was myself. We were open books with each other. There was never this feeling like I needed to try to be someone or something for him to like me, which means there was an absence of fear of abandonment. There was an absence of the fear of betrayal or rejection from him because I felt such unconditional love from him. He had seen me really messy, and he had seen me really, amazing moments too. And he loved me just the same, no matter what. And I think I didn't know what to do with that besides just push it away. It's like, this isn't love, is what I told myself. This can't be love. I know what love looks and feels like. I've been in love. And like I already said, I had equated love to this like fire, butterflies, like this intense pull towards that person. And with Justin, there wasn't that. But he was very clear on his boundaries. He knew what he wanted. And at the time, I had reminded myself, Alyssa, you said you wanted someone who knew what they wanted. You said you wanted someone who was clear and intentional, and here that person is. Don't you think that you should at least give it a try? And so I agreed, and Justin and I started dating. And it was amazing. We just continued being the way that we were. It was very consistent, and we were ourselves. But I want to highlight a couple thoughts that I would continuously have in that first part of our relationship. And the first one being the thought that the relationship is boring. So when you're not constantly trying to prove your worthiness or your lovableness or your belonging to your partner, then things can just feel really dull because you're not on this constant journey of performing, because you're not constantly trying to perform for this person to prove something. So things are just, quote unquote boring. There isn't this ignition. Things aren't hot and cold. You're not left constantly wondering. So all that time you spent worrying or trying to prove or performing or changing or fixing or overgiving and self-sacrificing, you have all this time and space to just be, and that can feel really boring. And because there was this boring element, I equated that to this isn't love, kind of what I was speaking to earlier. And so it's interesting to reflect back on how I was in the relationship in the beginning, because I had had quite a few relationships in my teenage years, early 20s, and in all of those relationships, I said I love you real quick. We're talking weeks, months. And for some of those, I had felt it before I had said it, right? Like I was ready to say it, but also afraid. But I had felt like I loved this person. With Justin, I didn't tell Justin I loved him until we had been dating for a year and a half, which is so wild to me. And it had took me going away to a music festival for a weekend without him with some friends. And I will never forget it, I was sitting at James Blake and I was having a very spiritual moment, and it clicked for me. I love Justin. I've loved Justin. I just have never known a love that feels like this. I have never known a love that is safe, that is warm, that is all encompassing, unconditional. That love with Justin, of course, feels different than love with my college partner or love with my high school partner. Love with Justin is supposed to feel different because he is different than my previous partners. And so I had this excitement build up around, wow, Alyssa, can you actually receive and be in a relationship that's so unconditionally loving in this way and feel safe in it? Because I had spent that whole year and a half constantly making our relationship wrong, constantly picking it apart, because all of my toxic patterns and traits and tendencies didn't work with him. He never needed me. And in previous relationships, that was something I would go to, which is, I need you to need me because it makes me feel loved. And Justin always had this secure attachment where he didn't really allow me to play that whole dynamic out with him. Being in a healthy, consistent, reciprocal relationship with someone triggered my trauma in a way that was new to me, that I think I'm still learning how to unravel from. Because my entire life, my nervous system has felt safe in chaos. And the more safe that I felt in my relationship, the more I softened, the more my nervous system would freak out. And that's why I would tell myself the story that our relationship is boring. And that's why I would tell myself the story that this wasn't love. This isn't what love looks like. This isn't what love feels like. And that's why I would pick silly little fights. And I really, really hyper fixated on Justin and making him into this partner that was not for me, for just tedious little things. That first 4 years of our relationship before we broke up was so detrimental to the health of our relationship. I watched my constant keeping one foot almost out of the relationship at all times suck the life and the love out of our relationship. I watched him lose this light that was in him before we started dating. I had always been the anxiously attached person, but in my relationship with him, I had become so much more avoidant because he was always solid. He was always present. There was no need for me to be anxious. But because I had unresolved trauma, it didn't feel safe for me to lean into that solid connection. And so I had like avoidance do, which is like 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of energy, which is like, I'm here, I'm present, we live under the same roof, I do love you. And of course, it's not to say that we were void of good times. Like, we had a lot of great times, but I don't think I was ever in this energy where I was 100% in. And that's, of course, felt in a relationship. So ultimately, what ended up happening was after 4 years of me continuously thinking he was the problem, 4 years of me neglecting and not turning my focus inward to focus on healing my unresolved trauma and what being in a relationship with someone who is secure and solid and consistent. After 4 years of me avoiding doing my own inner work and what the relationship was bringing up for me, it ultimately came to a head and we did break up. And just like how he had always been in our relationship, consistent, unconditionally loving, solid, it was the same in the breakup. It was so amicable. It was so respectful. I can honestly say that something Justin and I have never lacked is respect and love for one another. And even though sometimes I wish I would have turned my focus inward in the beginning of our relationship, because naturally I wonder how different our life would be had I actually focused on myself instead of constantly focusing on why he wasn't safe or why the relationship would never work or what was wrong with him, and instead turn the focus on me. Of course, I wonder how different things would have panned out. That breakup 4 years in was the thing that saved us. And I'm going to have to save that story for another time because that is a whole other journey. But I will say, in that time where we were not together, I was forced. I was forced to look at my unresolved trauma. I was forced to tend to the parts of me that were ready to be healed, that were ready to be reclaimed. I was forced to look at the way that I was relating to partners and the way that I was relating to men and the way that I was relating to just all my relationships. I really needed that time apart to look at myself in the mirror and see myself more clearly. And I don't think that you need a breakup to do that. I'm recording this podcast for you guys out there because I think if you are in a healthy, consistent relationship, it is absolutely possible to heal in the relationship. Because since Justin and I have gotten back together, it has been this beautiful opportunity every single day for me to tend to myself, for me to go within, for me to see what this relationship is mirroring back to me. And because I self-sabotaged in every single healthy relationship I've ever been in, I wanted to speak and share some of these reflections because it's time that we wake up. It's time that we allow ourselves to be in these relationships that are sovereign and authentic, and to bring compassion and curiosity to the parts of us that don't feel safe yet in those types of relationships. Something I hear often is, waiting for that other shoe to drop. We're waiting for the safe, secure, solid partner to be what every other person has been in our life. We're waiting for them to show us that they're just like everybody else. And by doing that, we're really just keeping them at an arm's distance, because we don't feel safe in safety, because we feel safer in chaos, because we've normalized dysfunctionality. And so can we do the inner work to tend to ourselves? Can we start reclaiming the parts of us that are frozen in time, that tell the stories, the other shoe's going to drop, this person's going to betray me, they're out cheating, like whatever story we've made up about the person who's just solid? Can we tend to the part of us that has that belief? Can we tend to the part of us that has that thought, so that we stop projecting our trauma onto the people who are in our lives. So that's the story about how Justin and I met, and a little information about what I've learned and what I know now about how I was relating to our relationship in the beginning. And I hope that it's supportive for you if you are finding yourself in a healthy, consistent relationship but are struggling. It is totally normal and it makes sense. And it is okay that you're having those thoughts, and it is okay that it doesn't feel safe yet. It is okay to be exactly where you are. And hopefully, this is an invitation to bring compassion and grace and curiosity to those thoughts and to those parts of you. Now, if you guys want a part 2 of the breakup and what happened to me in that time, let me know in the comments. Shoot me a DM. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave it in the Q&A. And if you haven't already rated or reviewed the podcast, please, please, please do so. It really helps people who aren't following me on social media find the podcast and join in on these conversations. I want to extend my gratitude for anyone who takes the time to do so. Thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much. And if you're not in our Substack community yet, I'll leave the link in the show notes or description box below. Substack is where I'm sharing our monthly meetups and our master classes and AMA chats so that we can connect more in real time. If you're wanting a little bit more community and you want to join in on these conversations, then I definitely invite you to subscribe on Substack. If you liked this episode, let a girl know. If you're watching on YouTube, like it, share it, leave a comment, throw me a DM on Instagram or TikTok because I love connecting with you guys. And that's what I have for you this week. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.